Welcome to the first episode of Off Your Gord. I'm your host, Jeffrey Gordon, and I'm here on Thursday, March the 20th, 2025, to discuss the latest important events in sports. We've got a full slate today. We're going to be talking about the NFL free agency period. We're going to be talking about the start of baseball. We're going to be talking about the NBA. We're going to be talking about motorsports such as NASCAR and Formula One. And we're also going to be doing a local sports roundup. And please remember, what you're going to hear today are just my opinions. Take them with a grain of salt. And with that, the first episode of Off Your Gord starts right now. I want to open by talking about the disaster that is the Dallas Mavericks. The Dallas Mavericks are a complete train wreck right now, have been for the majority of this season, and I think it's quite disappointing considering that going into 2024 rather, they had major title aspirations. This is a team, you got to remember, was playing for the championship against the Boston Celtics just last year. So I think going into this year especially, a lot of the fans kind of expected that this was going to be a title contender. I know I personally had them winning the whole thing. I had them beating the Cleveland Cavaliers, and we're just not seeing that with Dallas. Dallas is kind of a mess right now. And I think a lot of it has to do with a move that happened a couple of years ago. Mark Cuban recently sold the team, sold his majority share of the team, and the team's been in complete disarray since then. General manager Nico Harrison is completely incompetent. Frankly, he's made some boneheaded moves as of late. The Luka Doncic trade specifically is what I want to start here with. Anthony Davis was traded to the Mavericks in a move that I think shocked a lot of people. Luka was put in Los Angeles, and the Mavericks gave a reason for it, or rather, the insiders kind of gathered that the Mavericks felt that they didn't like Luka's conditioning. They were concerned about his weight, and I think that's frankly that's silly. He's been in great shape. He's been in great shape his entire career. Sure, in the off season he's had partying and he's done things such as that, but he's always found it in himself to be basketball ready when the season starts in October. He's got a great work ethic, always has, and this is a young star we're talking about. He's still in his early 20s. Anthony Davis is a tenured veteran of the league. Many would, I think, agree that his best years are certainly behind him. So it doesn't really make sense to me to give up your franchise piece, your foundation of your entire franchise, just to, I guess, send some guy off who you weren't really confident about his physical. That's never been a concern. I think a lot of people were frankly taken off guard when that was the reason cited, and frankly, the haul that they got in return just wasn't good enough. Anthony Davis is a great player, don't get me wrong, but you got to kind of look at the general manager and wonder what the plan for this franchise really is. The franchise is just completely in the mud. Unfortunately for them, they're ridiculously injured. Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis and basically all their top stars are completely injured, and they're running out of depth, which they're arguably the most injured team in the history of the sport, so much so that there's talk of them actually having to forfeit games, which would just be a complete embarrassment, a complete disaster for the franchise. And I think that, it just really reflects where this team is at right now. Kyrie Irving, basically the Mavericks' top star that they have left now that Luka's gone. You got to wonder if he's his whole heart is in it with the Dallas Mavericks. You got to realize in his career he's played for the Cavaliers, he's played for the Celtics, he's played for the Nets, he's played for some really good basketball teams. But he's developed arguably no closer relationships than those with Luka Doncic during his time with the Mavericks so far, and LeBron James during his time with the Cavaliers. And now you look in Los Angeles, Luka and LeBron are on the same team, and they've hit the ground running, and it's working, and the Lakers are really, really successful this season. You got to wonder if Kyrie, on the last year of his deal, is thinking of leaving and joining the Lakers to be with his close friends. I don't think that's a stretch at all. I think if the Mavericks are a sinking ship, and if you're on that sinking ship, it's time to get off, especially if you're a star player. I think Kyrie and Anthony Davis specifically are in the later years of their career, and you got to realize that they're not looking to waste time playing for a franchise that, frankly, doesn't have winning in its future. They got off to a good start, but that was when they had Luka. That was when they had a healthy team, and right now they are just in a complete mudslide, and you really hate to see it. This is a team, this is a franchise in general that I think was worthy of a lot of respect from the fans, especially when Mark Cuban owned it. They were very. They were winning championships. Dirk Nowitzki, Luka Doncic, they were very, very successful, and it's just disappointing to see that what this franchise has become. I want to shift gears now to talk about football, and more specifically the quarterback shuffle, or rather the Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes, or I guess you could call it the who is going to be forced to settle for Aaron Rodgers sweepstakes. Quarterback, it's arguably the most important position in all of sports. The quarterbacks in football have the most on their plate, I would argue, out of any position in any sport, in any American league. So Aaron Rodgers is a free agent once again. This is going to be the third team that he's been on in his career, and frankly, I don't know which team would really even be happy to have him at this point. His tenure with the Jets ended in complete disarray, and you're kind of seeing teams around the league solving their quarterback issues. Seattle landed Sam Darnold, who had a great season with Minnesota last year. The Raiders landed Geno Smith, who is, for him, it's a great opportunity to be reunited with his former head coach Pete Carroll, now in Las Vegas. So these teams are kind of figuring out their quarterback issues. You're left with teams kind of scrounging for a quarterback, so to speak. And one of these teams is going to have to settle for Aaron Rodgers. The teams that a lot of people have kind of pinpointed that are going to be in the running for Rodgers are the Vikings, the Giants, and the Steelers. I want to talk about the Vikings first, because that one doesn't make much sense to me. I think people saying that he'll go to the Vikings is more of like Brett Favre nostalgia almost, because, him and Rodgers have followed similar career paths. Favre went from the Packers to the Jets, then to the Vikings. And I think a lot of people, they see Aaron Rodgers going from the Packers to the Jets, and they think, oh, well, he'll do what Brett Favre did, go to the Vikings. I don't think that'd be a good decision at all, frankly. They've drafted J.J. McCarthy with a very high draft pick in the first round. And they should be dead set on using him. Granted, he had his torn meniscus injury that sidelined him for all of last year. That's why we saw Sam Darnold put up the season that he did. But you've got this first-round draft pick. You've got this young kid, athletic, great arm, very, very accurate. You don't need to waste time with an aging veteran who's, frankly, I would argue it's worse than his best days being behind him. I don't know how many good days he's got ahead of him. So I think that'd be a complete mess if the Vikings were to sign Rodgers. The Giants, I think he could be a New York Giant. I think that might, I don't know if work is the right word, but I think it could be okay. The Giants had drafted Daniel Jones in the first round in the 2019 draft, and they wanted him to be the successor to Eli Manning so badly. And he had some good years. First rookie season, he had a very promising rookie campaign. 2022, they found themselves in the playoffs, first time since 2016 when that happened. But I think the writing's been on the wall for quite some time now that the Daniel Jones tenure in New York was kind of a mess. And I think this coaching staff, this front office knows that they need to start winning or it'll be their jobs. I think so. If you're the Giants, you're going to want to sign, at the very least, a capable veteran, whether it's Rodgers or not. You need a capable veteran in the building that can just win you games. Because I'm telling you right now, if they don't start winning games soon, Dable's getting fired, the general manager's getting fired. It's going to be a complete overhaul in New York. Deservedly so. Finally, the team that I think a lot of people have sort of very much predicted Aaron Rodgers. This team, I would argue, is the front runner, is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They've recently moved on from Russell Wilson. They've recently moved on from Justin Fields. Justin Fields signing with the aforementioned New York Jets that Aaron Rodgers was a part of. Aaron Rodgers is now being pinpointed as potentially the quarterback in Pittsburgh. And, Pittsburgh, I think, situationally, is the best, that could get the most out of Aaron Rodgers. He's an aging veteran. His legs are completely shot, frankly, after his Achilles injury in 2023. So he's going to need a good offensive line to just sit behind and not have to do most of the heavy lifting, or rather running with his legs. So you've got offensive linemen like their first-round pick, Troy Fautanu, Mason McCormick, Zach Frazier. They're solid players that can just keep Rodgers standing upright, not on his back. I think is going to be crucial to any sort of success he'll have, if any. The question now becomes, which locker rooms will accept him. I think it's become pretty apparent in recent years he's a bit of a cancer to any organization he becomes a part of. The Packers were kind of able to keep it at bay, but Rodgers winning 2 straight MVPs and the Packers having as much success as they did, I think Rodgers got a little bit of a high ego, which he's always, it's always, you play a sport like football, you're going to need to have a high ego, but I think it got kind of out of hand with Aaron Rodgers. The Jets saw much the same thing. So, obviously getting Rodgers in the building is one thing. Having the team be okay with it is a complete other thing. Next, I want to shift gears to racing and motorsports as a whole. We're going to talk about NASCAR. Joe Gibbs Racing and Denny Hamlin have inked a deal with the insurance company Progressive. Progressive signed a multi-year contract to be on the number 11 car, Toyota Camry, of Denny Hamlin for 18 races this year. Starting this weekend at Homestead, they're getting right on the car right early, and they'll be on it for 17 more races after this. Progressive, I think it's a match made in heaven, really. Denny Hamlin is a bombastic personality, very controversial among the fans. You either love him or you hate him. And, so this is just a great deal. Hamlin, I think, as far as guys that could appear on TV in, Progressive commercials, Hamlin's one of the best choices you could possibly choose from. He's definitely that seasoned veteran, so he's no longer needing to kind of, placate to his advertisers. He can more show his personality, show his thoughts. And so I'm just imagining, ever since this deal got signed, just imagining him appearing in Progressive commercials. I think it's a great choice. And it comes at a great time. Hamlin was really, really, really trying to fill that void of what FedEx left. FedEx leaving at the end of last year. FedEx, had been on Hamlin's car since his rookie season in 2005. Long tenured partner of both Hamlin and Joe Gibbs Racing. So it's kind of a disappointment to see them leave. I think a lot of people were hoping they would be on Hamlin's car till the end of his career. They had such a great rapport. Anytime you're in a FedEx store, you could have bought a Denny Hamlin diecast. It was such a great rapport that I think a lot of people assumed they'd be on the car forever. Unfortunately, that wasn't the case, and Joe Gibbs Racing was kind of left having to piece together sponsorship for Hamlin. We saw Mavis tires on the car. We saw Sport Clips on the car. We saw recently AMPM signed a deal with Joe Gibbs Racing to appear for a few races, but neither of these big anchor sponsors for them to really fund the operation. So it comes at a great time for Hamlin getting Progressive. They can lift that monkey off their back, and Hamlin can focus on, hopefully winning his first ever championship. If he doesn't win his first ever championship, at least he takes solace in the fact that he's got a strong partner standing behind him. And might I add, a partner that's, entering the sport for the first time. Progressive taking their money to NASCAR. Geico had been the big insurance company in NASCAR for a while. Progressive saw an opening, they took it, and it's always cool to see new partners entering the sport, especially at a time when sponsorship in auto racing is such an important thing. You see guys in the lower series of NASCAR, especially like Chandler Smith, who was nearly forced to retire, being that he was having trouble piecing together sponsorship, and he recently inked a deal with the Ford Truck Series team, Front Row Motorsports. So luckily he didn't have to retire. He was able to piece together some funding, but it's a little disappointing sometimes when you take into account that sponsorship sometimes is more important than actual talent in NASCAR. I think it's a bit of an issue. I think back to Hamlin now. Even though he landed the big sponsorship, it's not all is right in Joe Gibbs Racing. Besides that top 2 finish he had at Phoenix, great finish, photo finish with Christopher Bell. I think a lot of Joe Gibbs Racing is going through a lot of changes right now, and you're definitely noticing that with the performance on track. Christopher Bell, the only team in Joe Gibbs Racing that didn't have major organizational changes, whether it be crew chief, driver, or pit crew, he's underwent none of those changes and has won 3 straight races and is dominating so far this season. I think he's a shoo-in to win at least 6 races. The other 3 cars, Denny's got Ty Gibbs as crew chief from last year. Ty Gibbs has a new crew chief this year who frankly is not ready for that at all. The 54 car has been terrible in pretty much every race this season. And finally, Briscoe, while his team is the same very successful team that Martin Truex had, Briscoe's just in a new spot. He's coming over from the Ford team of Stewart-Haas Racing. And Stewart-Haas, the writing was on the wall. That team was a dumpster fire long before they ceased operations. So Chase Briscoe, he even said in the media recently, it's just been an adjustment driving better cars that have actual grip. But I think Joe Gibbs Racing, they're so used to coming out of the gate strong, coming out winning multiple races right away. And they have done that with Bell, but I think they're used to having better performance early. So it's a bit of an adjustment, but I think they're going to get it together, especially, you've got some really good tracks for their drivers coming up. You've got Homestead this weekend. Denny Hamlin's been great there, multi-time winner there. You've got Martinsville coming up, which I think bodes well for a driver like Chase Briscoe. You've got Michigan in a few weeks, which I think Ty Gibbs can get his first career win at. So while things are kind of in free-for-all with Joe Gibbs now, I think things are on the up and up. Next, I want to talk about a different motorsport. We're going to go to Europe, or international. We're going to talk about Formula One. Formula One's season kicked off recently. We started the season with the Australian Grand Prix, and Lando Norris from McLaren was able to secure their first win of the season right away. I think that's a great start for them. We were so used to in recent years the dominance of Red Bull and the dominance of Ferrari, that seeing a team like McLaren really return to the top echelon of the sport it's always good to see. Max Verstappen had a good showing. I think me and many other people expect Verstappen to run away with the title once again. He's been the pillar of success in Formula One, so much so that I think it's coming at a bit of a detriment to the sport. Honestly, you're not seeing much passing. You're not seeing much active racing. It's more like, I almost liken it to like a high-speed Macy's Day Parade, which is kind of disappointing to see as somebody that grew up watching F1 and watching some really great racing from Michael Schumacher, from the early days of Lewis Hamilton. So it's just kind of, it's weird seeing, not much passing, not much active racing. But I'm hoping that, McLaren starting off the season, Lando Norris starting off with a win is a sign of good things to come, and I think it is. Verstappen, I don't think we're going to see him nearly sweeping the season like we've seen from him in recent years. I think at the very least, he may not, he may still lead the series in wins, but I don't think we're going to see complete and utter, frankly, boring dominance that we've seen from him in the past. I want to mention now that we're going to go from a sport that has a complete lack of parity, that could be on the up and up, to a sport now that has lack of parity, and why I think it's a good thing for the sport. I want to talk about the NBA season and its certain kind of lack of parity that we're seeing right now. There are essentially, of the 30 teams in the league, I think only 6 of them are really in it for winning the title. 3 in the East, 3 in the West. I think the Celtics, no shocker there. The Cavaliers, no shocker there. And the Knicks are really the only 3 teams in the East that I think can pull it off. And then I think the Thunder, the Lakers, and the Nuggets in the West are the only teams that can pull it off there. And I want to talk a little bit about each of those teams and why I think that this lack of parity is almost a good thing. Back in the day, we saw the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers compete against each other in 4 straight NBA finals. And I don't think a single NBA fan wanted each and every year to be Cavaliers, Warriors, Cavaliers, Warriors, Cavaliers, Warriors. But that was what we got. And I think the ratings definitely started to tank, and I think we're still kind of recovering from that. But granted, we saw big stars like Steph Curry and LeBron James in those finals, but the ratings definitely suffered a little bit. And we're seeing now a lot of really good basketball being played from these 6 teams rather, and it's led to kind of a renaissance in terms of competitive basketball. First, I want to talk about the Knicks. They're doing things the right way. What I love about the Knicks, in an era of super teams and forming super teams and players, like how Kyrie and James Harden and Kevin Durant met up in Brooklyn and joined the Nets together, and that did not work well. They I think played a combined 17 games with all 3 of them on the court. It was nothing. You're seeing players wanting to join other stars rather than establishing a young nucleus of talented players. The Knicks have done it the right way. They've drafted extremely well. They've made big signings when they've needed to. They've made big trades when they needed to. This team was a playoff team much before Karl Anthony Towns arrived, with stars like Jalen Brunson. But the arrival of just Karl Anthony Towns, a seasoned veteran who's been to the playoffs, who's been in big spots, been in big moments, I think has been a huge addition because it allows that veteran presence to kind of seep in all throughout the building. And we're definitely seeing it pay off. They're definitely a title contender. I would say probably the third likely in the East to win the East, but still a title contender nonetheless. Next, I want to talk about the Celtics. The Celtics are a well-oiled machine. They were last year. They've won the championship. They've been an elite franchise pretty much my entire life. I can't really remember a time when the Celtics weren't an elite team, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. You've got stars like Jaylen Brown just completely dominating, and I think there's definitely a chance that we see the Celtics go back-to-back. I think the Celtics are really the pedigree for success in the NBA, and will be for the foreseeable future. But my big prediction, and I've had this prediction since the start of the year, and they've done nothing but prove me right ever since. The Cleveland Cavaliers are the team to beat. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I think, have had 2 separate 15-game win streaks this season. One to start the season. They were undefeated for many games. They're just an elite team. You've got Darius Garland playing lights out, Donovan Mitchell playing lights out, all of their depth. Every single role player on this team is firing on all cylinders, and they are the team to beat, not just in the East, but in all of the NBA. Now let's talk about the West. You've got the Lakers. What else is there to say other than the big signing, or the big trade, Luka Doncic? You know, him and LeBron, I think a lot of people were concerned on how it would work and how you got 2 guys that really need the ball to be successful. I think a lot of people were concerned on how it would be successful. And luckily, with both of them being elite passers to each other, they've hit the ground running. The Lakers are back. And it's really awesome to see that LeBron, LeBron's getting up there in age. I don't see how he plays for much more than 2 or 3 more years. If he wants to win number 5 and potentially number 6 to tie MJ, these are the years you're going to need to do it. And securing Luka was huge in that. Next up, the Thunder. What more can you say? Just a young team like the Knicks. I call them the Knicks of the West. They've done everything right. They've got, I think, the best record or the second best record in all the basketball. They've drafted well. They've made big signings. Chet Holmgren is an absolute beast. Just the Great Wall sitting in the middle of the court, just able to, one of the best defenders in basketball. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is the kind of the antithesis of that. He's your flashy player that scores a lot. They're an elite team, and like the Celtics, I think they've been an elite team for nearly my entire life. And finally, the Nuggets. What else can you say? Nikola Jokic is dominating once again. I think well on his way to his third MVP award. Sorry. Next, I want to talk about baseball season. It's nearly underway. We're in the springtime, and all throughout the summer and into the fall, we're going to have the baseball season like we have, and it's really cool to see. Recently we started off the season. All these teams are still in spring training, but we've started the season for 2 teams, those being the Dodgers and the Cubs. They've started the regular season by having their series in Japan, and fittingly, Shohei Ohtani is back. He had his injury in the World Series that I think scared a lot of people. He came down awkwardly on his arm. Luckily, he still played in the World Series. Luckily for them, the Dodgers still won the World Series in pretty dominant fashion over the Yankees. And it's just really good to see him hit the ground running for the Dodgers this year. Absolutely crushing one into right field. Home run in his first game, or his first home run of the season, came in his home country of Japan. Shohei dominating last season. I don't know if he'll reach the level of success that he reached last season. He did have arguably the greatest baseball season, or one of the greatest baseball seasons ever had by a player. Barry Bonds, I think, is one of the few guys his seasons you can even put ahead of that. He dominated and became the first ever player to join the 50 club of home runs and stolen bases, and I don't know if he'll reach those stats this year, but I think he'll come damn close. Finally, the Mets have been bolstered this season. The Mets nearly won the NL last year. They'd lost very close series to the Dodgers, They've kept Francisco Lindor. They've kept Pete Alonso, which a lot of people thought they weren't going to be able to keep him. He ended up settling for less money. He wanted to stay a Med. You got to respect that. But the big signing, Juan Soto, they kept him in New York, but not with the Yankees. He signed with the Mets, and I think they're going to be a fantastic baseball team this year, even more than they were last year. The Dodgers, I think, will always be a threat, but we're going to talk about my World Series prediction now. I think if I was a betting man, I'm definitely going to go with the Orioles versus the Mets, and I've picked the Orioles the last 3 years, or 2 years rather, and they've let me down since then consistently. I think a team with that much talent should be doing a little bit better than they are. They've been a first-round exit multiple of the last few years. Gunnar Henderson is a fantastic player, but it's time for them. This year is kind of a put-up or shut-up kind of year. It's time for them to either make the World Series. It's World Series or bust, frankly. They need to get it together. The Yankees have their division rival, the Baltimore Orioles division rival, the Yankees. I think they have World Series aspirations again. They got, frankly, embarrassed in the World Series by the Dodgers, and I think this is a team that's hungry to get back. Aaron Judge did not have a good World Series showing at all. He's hungry to get back. He's got a lot to prove. I think there's starting to be a bit of a choking moniker about him that he needs to shed, and he needs to shed it quickly. But it's going to be a little hard for them. They're very injured already. Garrett Cole needing Tommy John surgery. Baseball, less strenuous than maybe other sports injury-wise, but this team that got completely embarrassed in the World Series has had some really bad luck in spring training already with injuries, and they, it's putting them at a disadvantage to try and defend their AL East championship bout. Next up, I want to switch more to a kind of a local sports roundup, sports roundup in general. Unfortunately, the Vermont Catamounts did not make the March Madness tournament. We've got March Madness starting. I believe Creighton versus Louisville is happening right now. And before we went on air, Creighton was leading that game. The tournament, there's always some great moments every year. Vermont made it in recent years, but unfortunately this season was just not the year. On their social media, they put it as, a strong showing, but unfortunately it wasn't quite enough. And, hoping that they can get it together next year. Back to NFL free agency, the Bears are having an incredible free agency period, not needing to sign a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, but rather just needing to make signings in general. Caleb Williams, their young rookie, statistically had a good year last year, but I think a lot of people saw that he was kind of overwhelmed at times. Luckily, they've signed some great offensive line pieces, and there's definitely expectations in Chicago that you could argue there hasn't really been for many years now. Devontae Adams, another big free agency piece, has fallen. He signed with the Rams. And the Rams lost Cooper Kupp, and he went to Seattle. So luckily, the Rams were able to kind of replace him right away. The Rams, I think, had gone not necessarily underwent organizational changes, but rather have kind of changed their philosophy on things. You saw them consistently just trading away first-round draft picks, not really valuing that first-round pick, rather using them to acquire new stars. They ended up making their first-round pick last year, and Jared Verse was a dominant rookie. He ended up winning the NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year. So you look to see if they're going to make their first-round pick this year. They're kind of doing things more by the books, but they've kind of need to rebolster things, and they have been doing that. And Devontae Adams is just a veteran wide receiver to kind of anchor the ship, so to speak. And finally, that's going to be the end of the show. This has been the first episode of Off Your Gord. I hope you enjoyed. We'll be discussing the NFL more heavily as draft season approaches. I know you've got quarterbacks like Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Jackson Dart. Interested to see where they land, as well as March Madness time, so we're going to be talking a lot about that, and the NBA playoffs. This has been your show. I am Jeffrey Gordon. Thank you so much for watching.